Were killed and 7 others missing after heavy rains across the Philippines flooded villages and triggered landslides, according to authorities.
The aircraft carrier Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth visits Singapore as part of a deployment aimed at boosting the UK's presence in the Indo-Pacific region.
The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, cut its growth forecast for the Philippines this year to below the government's lower target.
In 2019, and the government is eyeing additional options for internet connectivity so that this could reach the rural areas.
At least 11 people were killed and 7 others were missing after heavy rains across the Philippines flooded villages and triggered landslides, according to authorities. Now, severe tropical storm Kompasu, or Maring, drenched swathes of the most populous island of Luzon on Monday as it swept across the archipelago nation towards the South China Sea. Now, 6 people were killed and 2 missing in landslides in the landlocked mountainous province of Benguet. And then 1 person drowned in the province of Cagayan, according to the National Disaster Agency. 4 people were killed as flash floods hit 2 towns on the western island of Palawan, where 5 other people are still missing, according to officials. The Coast Guard said its personnel involved in the rescue effort also recovered 3 other bodies in the northern province of Ilocos Sur, but the disaster agency could not immediately confirm if the deaths were related to the storm. Now, major highways and bridges were flooded, but the water was retreating Tuesday as the storm bore down on the Asian mainland, according to authorities. Because a warmer atmosphere holds more water, climate change increases the risk and intensity of flooding from extreme rainfall.
The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, is ready to assist the Philippines following the onslaught of Typhoon Maring that has already claimed 11 lives and displaced more than 1,000 people. UNICEF is closely monitoring the situation in areas affected by Typhoon Maring. We're ready to provide humanitarian assistance when called upon by the government, the UNICEF Philippines said in a tweet on Tuesday. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, on Tuesday reported that 11 persons died in Cagayan, Palawan, and Benguet as the typhoon battered parts of Luzon and brought rains over the Visayas. 7 were also logged as missing, while 3 were injured, the Disaster Monitoring Agency said. An estimated 19,147 people were affected in Cagayan, Mimaropa, Caraga, and Cordillera Administrative Region, while some 6,567 have been displaced by the typhoon. Maring made landfall in the vicinity of Fuga Island in Cagayan on October 11. It left the Philippine area of responsibility on Tuesday morning and accelerated while moving westward over the West Philippine Sea in the afternoon.
Meanwhile, search and rescue teams have been searching for a woman who went missing after she was swept away by a strong river current in Badok, Ilocos Norte. Now, Marcel Tabihe, head of the Provincial Resiliency Office, said in an interview that the 30-year-old woman and her 3 companions were crossing the Lasian River in Barangay Nagrekban when the Carabao-drawn carriage they were riding in broke down. Now, members of the local Disaster Reduction and Management Council in Badok, Philippine National Police Bureau Fire Protection, and the Philippine Coast Guard joined forces to locate the victim. Ilocos Norte was down to signal number 1 as of 5 p.m. Weather bulletin on Tropical Storm Maring, which was already outside the Philippine area of responsibility.
The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency says South Korea will donate 1.1 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to Vietnam and 470,000 doses to Thailand. The donations come as South Korea has administered nearly 80% of its 52 million population with at least one dose of a vaccine. The ministry said the government will push for the vaccine donation to participate in the world's effort to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. The ministry also said it decided to donate the vaccine to the key trading partners in the region to help protect Korean nationals living in the nations as well as local residents. In the latest tally, South Korea administered the first dose of COVID-19 vaccines to 77.9% of the population, with 59.6% being fully vaccinated. It is the first time that South Korea is directly donating COVID-19 vaccines to foreign nations, except for financial support through the COVAX program.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Secretary Joey Concepcion, said the private sector is now considering vaccinating the children of their employees. Let's listen in.
So, ang vaccination level of acceptance dito sa private sector, ang taas, umaabot ng 90 to 100%. In our company, halos 100%. Pero maraming gustong kumuha ng bakuna. So now, what we're telling them, bakunahin na rin namin yung mga bata ng mga empleyado namin. So kasi ngayon minsan, ang problema dito sa ngayon, ang pinipierce ngayon yung family bubble. Marami nakakasakit dito sa pamilya kasi ang mga anak hindi bakunado, lumabas, nakasakit. Then they go in their family bubble, then tuluyan ba, mga buong pamilya nahahawa. So we have to really vaccinate everybody in the family bubble as we are vaccinating everybody in the negosyo bubble. That's very important. Itong mga restaurants, mga spas, mga sinehan, dapat lahat ang mga empleyado nila bakunado kasi they're only accepting customers that are vaccinated. So eventually they have to be able to mandate that their employees, the salons, the spas, the restaurants, etc., they have to ensure that their employees are vaccinated.
Metro Manila mayors unanimously approved shortened curfew hours from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. in the National Capital Region starting October 13, that is today, due to the declining number of COVID-19 cases. Metropolitan Manila Development Authority or MMDA Chairman Benjamin Benhur Abalos Jr. said the Department of Health or DOH reported a general decrease in COVID-19 active cases in the National Capital Region or NCR on account of rapid and efficient detect and isolate strategies and enhanced vaccination efforts. Abalos said the adjustment on curfew hours was approved by the 17 Metro Manila mayors due to the declining number of infections, subject to the continued observance and enforcement of COVID-19 protocols and minimum public health standards. Everything is going down, Abalos said, stressing that the number of COVID-19 cases are declining as well as the reproduction rate, according to DOH data and Octa research. In light of the recent developments, particularly the steady decrease of active cases, the curfew hours being presently implemented in the NCR under Alert Level 4 has to be adjusted, Abalos added. The current curfew hour is from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. is following the implementation of a new alert level system last month being pilot tested to further curb the spread of the deadly virus.
Now, the World Health Organization's vaccine advisors on Monday recommended people with weakened immune system should be offered an additional jab or additional dose of WHO-approved COVID-19 vaccines. The UN Health Agency's experts also said over 60s fully immunized with China's Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines should be offered an additional third vaccine dose. The Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, or SAGE, stressed it wasn't recommending an additional booster dose for the population at large, which is already being rolled out in some countries. The WHO wants a moratorium on booster doses for the general population until the end of the year to prioritize first doses in the dozens of nations starved of vaccines. Now, the WHO's target of getting 10% of the population in each country fully vaccinated by the end of September was missed by 56 states. However, almost 90% of high-income countries hit the target. Now, SAGE said it would review the issue of general booster doses on November 11. Several COVID vaccines have been given WHO approval for emergency use during the pandemic, namely Pfizer-BioNTech, Janssen, Moderna, Sinopharm, Sinovac, and AstraZeneca. And they're all two-dose vaccines except the Janssen jab.
To Thailand now, concerns over public health safety have been raised by some medical experts as state agencies gear up for Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha's vow to reopen the country to fully vaccinated tourists from November 1. To tell us more, here's Jomer Baldo of EBC Thailand Bureau. Hi, Jom.
Yes, hello, Cristel. With Thailand's tourism reopening plan to the fully vaccinated tourists on November 1st, medical workers and scientists have expressed concerns on possible doubling of COVID-19 infections in the country. The Tourism Authority of Thailand, or the TAT, plans to welcome tourists from low-risk countries without required quarantine periods at designated hotels and facilities. TAT exclaimed that Thailand could not be able to compete with other countries who have restarted their tourism activities with stricter quarantine protocols. Neighboring countries like Singapore have already announced their reopening plans, while the European Union, the Britain, and the US have already opened. The agency stressed out that they have been preparing for the event, as reflected by the initial reopening of Phuket Sandbox in the third quarter of this year. Bangkok is expected to be in line in this next phase of the tourism resumption. In response, the Public Health Ministry has also planned ways to improve the COVID-19 testing to future tourists upon arrival at the airports. So far, 4 countries have been named to be permitted entry to the country, including Britain, Germany, the US, and China. More updated list of countries will be announced in the coming days, according to CCSA. Meanwhile, Dr. Thira Worotanarat, an associate professor at the Chulalongkorn University's Faculty of Medicine, expressed warnings on possible doubling surge of the viral infection with these hopeful plans. He cited an analysis of infections experienced by Denmark and Chile, which reopened on September and October, respectively. While the Thai Red Cross said they support the reopening, they also expressed their concern on the possible trigger of cases and major outbreaks. Additionally, virologist Anjong Kaiwatana of the National Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology asked through a Facebook post, how could the country perform RT-PCR testing on possible 100,000 tourists who would visit? Even if it has never been done such practice before. Back to you, Cristel.
Thank you so much for your update, Jomerl. Stay safe and stay healthy always.
Stay safe too. Reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand, I am Jomerl Bundad Baldo. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, John Merle. And Crystal and I will be back right after this break.
Ang sigaw ng Pinoy Nation. Ano sa palagay nyo? Abangan! Simula October 18, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga. Mapapanood sa Net25 TV, Facebook page and YouTube channel. Mapapakinggan din sa DZEC 1062 at Eagle FM 95.5.
Iyo sanang matandaan bago tuluyang lumisan na minsan ang minahal ay ako.
Hi guys, it's me Fonzie, and I'm actually inviting you to please catch me on Letters and Music, on air and online this coming Sunday, October 17 from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. only here, Net 25. See you there!
Welcome back. The aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth visited Singapore as part of a deployment aimed at boosting the United Kingdom's presence in the Indo-Pacific region. Take a look. Now, it is the flagship of the UK's Carrier Strike Group, which conducted exercises with Singapore's Air Force and Navy on Saturday. The massive 65,000-ton is one of the two largest warships ever built in the UK and is leading a group of 6 British ships and a submarine, 1 U.S. destroyer, and a Dutch frigate. Now, the strike group set sail in May on a deployment that will see it cover over 26,000 nautical miles and 14 nations. Minister for Asia Amanda Milling has visited the flagship of the UK's Carrier Strike Group 2021 in Singapore. Now, while she was in Singapore, the minister met with Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Sim Ann, where they discussed the Carrier Strike Group visit to the region, the UK CPTPP application, and the ongoing work between the UK and Singapore to boost trade and the digital economy. Now, the British High Commission hosted a roundtable event with academics and think tanks. The session covered regional and security issues such as the UK's new trilateral partnership with the United States and Australia, or AUKUS. Singapore is one of more than 40 countries the strike group will interact with through visits or exercises during its global deployment, according to a British government statement. Britain, like China, now has 2 aircraft carriers compared to the United States, 11. The $4 billion Queen Elizabeth is the largest warship built by the British military and is roughly the length of 3 soccer fields at 274 meters or 900 feet. The Queen Elizabeth traveled to Japan last month to mark the start of the permanent military presence, which came as the US, Britain, and Australia agreed a trilateral regional defense pact called AUKUS.
The Royal Canadian Navy is in a goodwill visit to the Philippines to demonstrate the friendly relations between the two countries. The Canadian Embassy in Manila Tuesday said Her Majesty's Canadian ship, HMCS Winnipeg, arrived on Monday and would be docked at the port of Manila until October 13. The Winnipeg last visited the country in 2017. Aside from reaffirming the two nations' ties, the embassy said this visit also reflects Canada's commitment to its vibrant partnership with the Indo-Pacific and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. And I quote, "As a maritime nation, the Philippines has always been a very good host to our fleet, and I know this visit will further strengthen a relationship that bridges the Pacific Ocean," Canada's ambassador to the Philippines, Peter MacArthur, said during the arrival ceremonies. Operations conducted by the HMCS Winnipeg, together with our allies and partners in the region, demonstrate Canada's ongoing commitment to supporting a free and open Indo-Pacific, he added. HMCS Winnipeg is deployed to the Indo-Pacific region from August to December 2021 to conduct forward naval presence operations in the region, as well as cooperative deployment and participate in international naval exercises with allied and partner nations. The HMCS Winnipeg has 262 highly trained and professional sailors, including 11 of Filipino descent.
In other news, the collapse of a $1 billion deal to curb Indonesian deforestation has highlighted the pitfalls of a UN-backed global initiative, which critics say has been ineffective and trampled on indigenous communities' rights. Protecting trees is key to meeting ambitious climate goals, with tropical rainforest loss accounting for about 8% of annual carbon dioxide emissions, according to monitoring platform Global Forest Watch. Let's listen in.
The science is increasingly showing that forests moderate the climate in ways other than through greenhouse gas emissions. So, for example, through evapotranspiration, forests cool the surface of the planet, and we lose that cooling function. Some of these large-scale REDD+ initiatives have had impacts towards the ultimate objective of reducing emissions from deforestation. Arguably, for example, the $1 billion commitment back in 2009 to the Brazilian government to reward reductions in emissions from deforestation of the Amazon was not determinative, but was definitely a thumb on the scale in consolidating political will behind the emissions reductions that were already underway.
With this ending agreement between Norway and Indonesia, from our view, regardless of the fate of the original agreement, we need far more ambitious target and more international cooperation, not less. With this, we saw how a government in Indonesia seem less ambitious of the target. Also, the end of the agreement saw how both governments are lacking in serious ambition to combat climate change, and only signifies no political responsibilities in combat.
A key tool in the fight has been the United Nations-backed REDD+ mechanism, a framework where public and private funds are paid to developing countries to curb emissions by reducing deforestation. Now, hundreds of projects have sprung up worldwide under the initiative over the past decade, and major donors include Norway, Germany, and Britain. Projects range from national-level schemes supported by foreign governments to smaller private ones, which generate carbon credits to be sold to firms seeking to offset emissions. But the initiative has been dogged by controversy, with environmentalists saying projects in some places, including Cambodia, Peru, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, have failed to involve local communities and deliver on promised benefits, in some cases leading to conflict. Last month, Indonesia, home to the world's third largest expanse of tropical forest, walked away from the $1 billion deal with Norway, having received only a tiny fraction of the money. Globally, deforestation has only escalated in recent years. Destruction of pristine rainforests was 12% higher in 2020 than the year before, despite the global economic downturn or economic slowdown, according to Global Forest Watch.
The Indonesian government has administered COVID-19 vaccine doses to almost 2,000 foreign refugees in a bid to achieve herd immunity, a Foreign Affairs Ministry official has said. The ministry's Human Rights and Security Director, Aksanul Habib, said. The refugees are mostly residing in Jakarta, Kupang, Tanjung Pinang, East Aceh, Medan, and Tangerang, he noted at the virtual media gathering on the 2020 Indonesia's Multilateral Diplomacy Priority Activity Plan and Achievement here on Tuesday. They have been included in the vaccination program to boost herd immunity since they coexist with permanent residents. Thereby, herd immunity can be achieved, he revealed. However, he said that one of the problems faced in vaccinating refugees is they do not have the residential identification number akin to legal foreigners, he noted. Hence, he said that the government has found it necessary to coordinate with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR, to deal with such issues. Habib added that the vaccination program for refugees should not use the state budget since its allocation is mainly for Indonesian citizens.
Now, travelers from 18 countries, excluding Singapore, will be allowed to enter Indonesia once international flights to Bali reopen on October 14. Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment, Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, has said that according to Burnham News. Now, these countries will be listed in the instruction of the Home Affairs Ministry, which will be released soon, he informed. Regarding the countries that can enter Indonesia, he said there are 18 countries which will be announced in an integrated manner and in a circular letter from the Home Affairs Minister. Now, this he announced at an online press conference in Indonesia on Monday. Although he didn't mention the other countries, he also said that Singapore has been excluded from the list. The decision was made because Singapore has not met the level 1 and 2 standards in accordance with WHO provisions, he said. Cases of COVID-19 in Singapore have not subsided, Panjaitan noted. Data recorded on Sunday pegged the number of COVID cases in Singapore at 2,809, according to him. As COVID-19 cases have declined in Indonesia, the government has permitted some leeway, including reopening of international flights to Bali, which will kick off from October 14. And despite the improvement, Panjaitan urged the people to remain vigilant and continuously follow the health protocols.
Initial assessment of the Department of Agriculture, or DA, showed that severe tropical storm Maring has destroyed 29.4 million pesos worth of agricultural in the Cordillera Administrative Region. According to the DA's data released on Tuesday afternoon, Maring affected 1,128 farmers with a volume of production loss at 1,713 metric tons and damaged 1,225 hectares of agricultural areas. The affected commodities in the region include corn and high-value crops. The Department of Agriculture, through its regional field offices, is further assessing and validating the damage and losses brought by Maring in the agri-fisheries sector. The agency said it also maintains close coordination with concerned government offices, local government units, and other disaster risk reduction management related offices to further assess the impact of Maring as well as available resources for interventions and assistance. The DA said it has enough quick response fund for the rehabilitation of affected areas, and distribution of rice, corn, and assorted vegetable seeds will be implemented to affected regions, while drugs and biologics for livestock and poultry needs will also be provided for those who need assistance. Other monetary aid will be addressed through the DA Survival and Recovery Loan Program of the Agricultural Credit Policy Council. There are also available funds from the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation to indemnify affected farmers. Alma and I will be back after this short break. Don't go away.
innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Tayong mga Filipino, likas na palabati. Sanay rin tayong makipagkamay. Pero dahil na rin sa COVID pandemic, isinusulong ang pagbati na hindi na kailangan pang makipagkamay. Ang pambansang pagbati. Ito ay ang pagdampi ng kanang palad sa gitnang bahagi ng dibdib, kasabay ng bahagyang pagyukod ng ulo o paibabang tingin, at pagsambit ng mga salitang nagpapahayag ng pagbati, paggalang o pagpupugay. Pagkatapos nito ay ang pag-angat ng ulo ng nakangiti at nakatingin sa mata ng binabati. Pambansang pagbati, pagpapakita ng paggalang, kababaang loob at pagiging sensero nating mga Filipino.
Welcome back. The Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, stressed the need for a transparent and predictable regulatory environment for the services sectors, citing the current work of the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in crafting services domestic regulations. Now, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said in an event on Tuesday that the services sector, which are major economic drivers, need further assistance to recover amid the pandemic. Take a look.
More than providing access to services markets, it is imperative that we also provide a transparent and predictable regulatory environment to help services firms engage in the international market. Hence, it may be worth considering the work that the WTO undertook to establish disciplines on services domestic regulations under the WTO Joint Statement Initiative discussions. Although considered a plurilateral arrangement, it is encouraging to see that a group of like-minded members are ready to commit to a shared goal of mitigating the unintended trade restrictive effects of regulatory measures in their economies. I strongly believe that disciplines for the good governance of our services markets is essential to creating new trade opportunities for firms. This is particularly true for our micro SMEs, who are often burdened by uncertain and costly requirements and procedures. Recognizing the significance of this work, I commend the APEC Group on Services for its achievement in endorsing the statement encouraging completion of the WTO services domestic regulation. We all can play a role for a strong, resilient, and inclusive global recovery. Our strengthened resolve to implement the reinvigorate APEC services agenda will only demonstrate our commitment to provide an enabling business environment for our services firms. I believe there is no better time than now, when economies are reopening, businesses are reorganizing, and people are adapting, that we should set a clear direction for our services sectors in the post-pandemic world.
The services sector accounted for 65% of the global GDP in 2019. The APEC region services exports for the same period reached $2.4 trillion, which is more than a third of the worldwide total.
The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, cut its growth forecast for the Philippines this year to below the government's lower target. In the latest issue of the World Economic Outlook, the IMF said it now forecasts the Philippines to grow by 3.2% for 2021, down from the 5.4% forecast of the country's gross domestic product growth in July. The latest IMF growth forecast is lower than the government's 4 to 5% target growth range for the year. It is also lower than the forecast of other multinational monetary authorities. In September this year, the Asian Development Bank, or ADB, said its forecast for the Philippine economy is to grow by 4.5% for this year. In June, meanwhile, the World Bank said it sees the country growing by 4.7%. For next year, the IMF projects the country to bounce back to a growth of 6.3%. For 2026, the IMF said the Philippines will likely sustain its growth at 6.5%. The Global Monetary Authority has also slashed its growth forecast for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations 5, or Asean 5, for the year, with one of the steepest revisions per region seen in the October World Economic Outlook. The IMF slashed the ASEAN 5's growth forecast to 2.9% for this year from the 4.3% projection they made in July. The ASEAN 5 regional bloc is composed of the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. For next year, the IMF sees the region growing by 5.8%, also down from the July projection of 6.8%.
Meanwhile, the ongoing hit from the COVID-19 pandemic and the failure to distribute vaccines worldwide is worsening the economic divide and darkening prospects for developing nations, according to the IMF. Now, global economic growth this year and the next is expected to continue as the recovery solidifies broadly. But the overall figures mask large downgrades and ongoing struggles for some countries, especially developing countries. Let's listen in.
The outlook for low-income developing countries has taken a turn for the worse due to worsening pandemic dynamics. The downgrade also reflects more difficult near-term prospects for the advanced economy group, in part due to supply disruptions. Now, these divergences are a consequence of the great vaccine divide and large disparities in policy support. While over 60% of the population in advanced economies are fully vaccinated, and some are now receiving booster shots, about 96% of the population in low-income countries remain unvaccinated. Recent developments have made it abundantly clear that we are all in this together, and the pandemic is not over anywhere until it's over everywhere. If COVID-19 were to have a prolonged impact into the medium term, it could reduce global GDP by a cumulative $5.3 trillion over the next 5 years relative to our current projection. So again, the expectation is that some of this will persist into next year, but then over time, we expect that these will iron out, and we should expect to see inflation coming back to much more normal ranges. But again, I'm just going to emphasize that there is tremendous uncertainty. We have never seen a recovery of this kind, where you have shortages in the labor market at the same time that you have high levels of unemployment.
Small Business Corporation, the financing arm of the Department of Trade and Industry, is readying a loan program to help micro and small businesses provide employees with their 13-month pay. And I quote, similar to what we did last year, we see no reason to defer the 13-month pay for this year as the government stands ready to support businesses amid the pandemic. We already reached out to SB Corp to develop a facility that will provide zero-interest loans to companies needing 13-month funding, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said in a statement Tuesday. Lopez said SB Corp is expecting that loan amount will range between 50,000 pesos to 200,000 pesos to cover 13-month pay for employees of these enterprises. The budget for this new lending facility will come from the remaining allocation under Bayanihan 2 given to DTI for its COVID-19 assistance to restart enterprises loan program. Some 8 billion pesos were allotted to continue the implementation of the zero-interest loan initiated by DTI. But the DTI chief believes that business continuity is the key to help enterprises thrive amid the pandemic. Lopez earlier pushed for opening of businesses at all alert levels and only adjusting the operating capacities.
Meanwhile, the government is eyeing additional option for internet connectivity so that this could reach the rural areas. Now with this, PhilSA is introducing the Incentivize project, which calls for new satellite internet operators, or SIOS, to conduct test deployments in selected remote sites. Take a look.
In 2019, World Bank data showed that only 46.88% of the population in the Philippines had access to the internet, making it the country to have the third lowest penetration rate in the Asean region. So in light of the foregoing, there's a need to offer viable options for effective broadband connectivity in rural areas or geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas of the Philippines. We believe that the advent of new satellite systems can help, and we would like to be able to try out their new technologies in the local setting, especially in these areas. So as a first step, we launched a call for Incentivize for new satellite internet operators, or SIOs, to conduct test deployments or trials in the Philippines, and PhilSA will facilitate these test deployments. These deployments will be implemented in select remote sites in the country, which will allow the performance and viability of their new and advanced technologies to be demonstrated, experienced, and assessed ahead of planned or scheduled commercial service. Click, please. Specifically, we are targeting companies that operate satellites in so-called non-geostationary orbit, or NGSO, for providing internet access. Examples of such NGSO SIOs include OneWeb of UK and Starlink of Elon Musk. In particular, we want to use the new internet satellite technologies in LEO and MEO. The system in the yellow box is what Incentivize will try to bring in through the open call. The project will facilitate the entry and deployment of satellite user terminals and or gateway equipment so we could access LEO and MEO satellites to establish broadband internet connection.
Very good project. Thank you very much, Cristel, always for keeping me company here on ASEAN in Focus.
Thank you so much to Alma. And just before I go, we would like to greet Brother Willen Regalado. Thank you for always watching and supporting us po.
Hello, Brother Willen. Thank you very much.
Thank you po. And that's the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today here in ASEAN in Focus. Again, I am Cristel Mapa of PBC Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
And we'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Dapat iintindihin kita pag ika'y nagkalit. nga pala si Seth Dongga at abangan niyo ko bilang guest performer sa Letters and Music ngayong Sabado, October 16, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Siyempre, dito lang sa Net25. See you po!
Walang hanggan, pangako yan, pangako.
Iba't ibang sakuna at kalamidad ang nararanasan ng bansa. Kapag may banta ng panganib, kailangang maging alerto at kung kailangang lumikas ay magtungo sa ligtas na lugar. Bilang paghahanda sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, mahalaga na may gobag na dadalhin ang pamilya. Narito ang dapat na nilalaman ng gobag ng isang pamilyang handa. Mahalagang dokumento sa selyadong lalagyan, flashlight, kandila, posporo at silbato, radyo na may bago at ekstrang baterya, first aid kit kasama ang panlunas sa lagnat, LBM, sugat at iba pa. Ang mga gamot na regular na iniinom ng pamilya. Magagamit para sa mga sanggol, bata, matatanda at may kapansanan. Pera at mga barya. Pagkain na madaling ihanda, di na kailangang lutuin at sapat para sa 3 araw. Inuming tubig sa saradong lalagyan at sapat para sa 3 araw. Telepono, power bank at charger. Lubid, lumang dyaryo, matitibay na lalagyan, damit, kapote, bota at mga sanitary supplies, sleeping bag o banig at mga kumot. Suriin ang mga laman ng gobag kada 3 buwan at palitan ang mga laman nito na malapit nang masira. Ilagay ang gobag sa lugar na madali itong makita at makuha sa oras ng sakuna.
Ang trabaho naman talaga ng maritime group ng PNP is to enforce the maritime laws.
Tayo lang yung stricto, pero in other parts of the country, pwede na naman ang tourism.
Definitely, we are ready to respond to a possible spike.
Sapagkat ang aming intensyon ay makatulong lang sa mga tao na wala talagang magamit na gamot.
92 voted for this resolution, which will make it stronger, calling on the Justice Department to come up with more stringent ways to be able to avert these hate crimes against Asian Americans.
Mas marami po tayong magagamit ngayon na mga tools or mga equipment.
Maraming salamat, Weng, at sa buong puwersa ng Balitalakayan sa pagkakataong ito.
Napakain ang mga pangunahing balita live sa teleradyo ng Net25 at Radyo Aguila DCEC 1062. Kasama si Weng de la Fuente sa...
At itong Balitalakayan, we live in interesting times.
Ano man ang iyong mithiin, maaasahan mo ako. Matinding pagsubok may danasin, pagbangon ay karamay ako. Noon pa may itinuring, di ka na iba sa akin. Kaya na sa ating pagsulong, pangarap natin abutin. Ano man ang adhikain, katuwang mo ay ako pa rin. Tuwid at mabuting layunin, ipagmamalaki natin. Ganda ng ating kultura, sining natin at musika, kailan